We are now down to the last session, but not the least. Stick around. This is going to be an exciting one. We have two dynamic entrepreneurs here. I would like to introduce, and you've heard one side of the story from the VCs, from the investors. Sometimes they call it the dark side. I wouldn't like to call it that way. But now we're going to hear the other side. And it's my pleasure to welcome Shubh Bhaumik, CEO and founder of Tredence, and Vikram Kapoor, CTO and co-founder of Lacework. Both of them my juniors, but dynamic entrepreneurs building close to be unicorn companies. One is already a unicorn, another one will be a unicorn pretty soon. So we're going to have a chat with them. So, this panel is titled Best Practices in a Startup. It's really all about learning, what they did well and what they screwed up, right? So, it's really what it comes down to that, in brutal honesty, right? But, before we jump into that, well, I had already graduated. So I don't know much about you guys. I don't think I got a chance to tag you guys, but tell me a little bit about your favorite BHU moment. Let's start with. So Shubh, you want to recount your BHU days and favorite BHU moment?
Sure. By the way, I realize this is the last session between all of you and those two bar counters, so I've been told by Rachna to keep it brief, so I'll try my best. My favorite BHU moment, I think, was the day when the ragging period ended.
Okay.
And we had a party.
We can relate to that.
Yeah, we had a party which our second years threw for us, and Dalal was one of them.
Dalal must be in the crowd. Satish Dalal.
Cricket fast bowler. Okay.
Probably stepped out.
Yeah, I think that was my best moment.
Good. Vikram?
So actually, a lot of moments, and obviously, some of my best friends are still from BHU. But one of the moments I do remember is actually related to Jagdish, where there was a probe for the one symposium that we did in like '95, and that was my first foray into competitive CS basically. And it was so amazing to see how you can make a difference in in a resource constrained environment, right? Like basically, when I look back at BHU, we didn't have internet, we didn't have computers, there was no AC, half the time electricity was a problem. So you're kind of solving a problem in a resource constrained environment, and what we could do in that symposium was actually a big part of how I started seeing things can be different basically. So yeah, that was probably one of my proudest moments of being at BHU essentially.
Thank you. So, just to kind of get them started, they say as a founder, you got to have your elevator pitch ready.
Yeah.
So, what's the elevator pitch for you guys? Maybe we start with Vikram first.
Yeah.
He's part of a big unicorn company. I don't know whether you guys know about Lacework. They're blazing the trail. A good friend of mine, Mike Spicer, from my Veritas days, started it with Vikram and team. So Vikram, what's your elevator pitch?
Yep, so Lacework is essentially in cloud security. And what that means is that if you are running some environment in AWS, GCP or Azure, you need to kind of think about how to secure it. And that's how we help customers with. And it's a platform, it starts all the way from automated breach detection to compliance to vulnerability management and infrastructure as code and shift left, and now a lot of other features being added to that same platform. But overall, if you're running a cloud environment, you need something like Lacework essentially. And we kind of think about security as a data problem. And what I mean by that is that you collect a lot of data, you process it, and the insights is what the customer is really paying you for. So at the end of the day, it's actually really a data analytics kind of look at security. And that's how we have been executed last 7 to 8 years.
Thank you. So you are a product company. You're building a product,
Yes,
a SaaS
it's a
product.
product, it's a SaaS product in security, cloud security space.
Good. Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, we are building a solutions company. So I think we all know enterprises are drowning in data, and the biggest challenge is actionability and adoption of those insights. And Tredence is a company we created 10 years back to solve that problem, especially in customer analytics and supply chain. Thank you.
Excellent. So, these guys, how many founders in the audience? Can you put your, all right. How many aspiring founders or people thinking about doing something? All right. Okay, founders are control freaks, right? I mean, at least that's how I feel. At least I was one, and I think I probably still am. So, what's your journey? So let me talk a little bit about when you started. You both have built companies that have grown nicely. So when you started, go back to the day you started. What was your financing journey? I mean, we heard from the VCs, right? How they pick the entrepreneurs. I've always said you are interviewing a VC as much as they are interviewing you. So what made you choose those VCs that you went with, and why were they the best fit?
It's actually
Go ahead.
Well, so, I mean, it's something I've thought a lot about, and actually thought a lot about before Facebook also. And fundamentally, the conclusion I arrived was that you need a team, you need an idea or a problem to solve, and then you need financing. And if you have two of them, you can get the third. And to that level, it's hard to get financing before the product or the idea, or the team or the idea, but sometimes you can. But fundamentally, we started with there is a space in cloud security, not cloud actually, like data center security, where we can build a product, and then we would have to have a very good intersection of skill sets we require in the founding team to kind of build that product. So at some level, I kind of started realizing it more and more later that some teams can build some products, like a team has a very narrow range of what they can build, because that's where their skill sets are. And sometimes you're trying to build a product and you don't have skills for that, and then you have to change the team. So it's a very iterative process where you have to decide the problem and have the right skills to build it. And once you do that, then you're on your financing journey. And the same equation goes with the VCs at that point. In fact, what Naveen and Tim said today was that fundamentally you have to align yourself in the long-term vision of what the VCs are doing. Because if there's a misalignment, it's a problem 2 years from now, basically. But eventually the team, which includes the VCs and the problem that you're going after, has to be very closely tied up to the hip, right? It's a skills that requires to solve a problem, and the problem requires these skills. Both has to be true.
Sure.
So our journey was a little different from yours, Vikram, because we are in the services space, and for the first 7 years or so, we were bootstrapped. I did my first round in 2020, and this was a private equity, not a VC, because services companies typically don't get a lot of attention from VCs. So what did I look for? I looked for a strategic fit. I looked for people who I felt I could be working with for long hours, especially when times got difficult. And I was looking for a tactical, something that could be tangibly acquired through that investment, beyond capital, right? Because color of money is green. Wherever you get it from, it doesn't matter, but something incremental, something tangible that you can get through the investment was very important for us. And we got that. We did a $30 million round in 2020. One thing I will say, Jagdish, is this fundraising process is a progressive process.
Yes.
And I realized that for us to continue to invest in innovation, even being a services company, to create something that differentiated in the market, you need that outside capital. You need that access to that outside operating network, right? And also, you have to create liquidity for your people, right? Because if you're not a public company, for some of your early employees who have gone through the grind with you in those early years, you have to create those liquidity opportunities, right? So you have to create, you have to keep going back to the market, even if you are cash flow positive, because you want to kind of achieve those two objectives. So hence we are actually in the market right now exploring a Series B opportunity. But my objectives and goals and the strategic fit that I talked about will still very much remain the same.
So that's actually pretty fascinating here. You have a product company which typically goes through kind of a different cycle. People, obviously product market fit is important. You want to go after a big market, solve a real pain and build your product, get the VC money, but the focus is going to be a lot more growth, revenue, right? Profitability is probably not that. It usually comes later on. Unless, of course, something like a market correction happens when, of course, you have a whiplash. But normally, that's the product company journey, right? And then, services companies, they have a different set of challenges and a different kind of go-to-market strategy, right? You're investing in people, you have to be profitable, you have a different kind of multiple that works with you, so you have to make sure you're smart to kind of work with that market dynamics. So, how, as you evolve this, right? There's a lot of go-to-market strategies, do you go after, so let's start maybe, starting from you, services side. There's obviously horizontal versus vertical. What do you focus on? Do you kind of offer services for everybody or a particular vertical market? Do you go kind of up market, go sell to large enterprises and get big ticket things, or you kind of focus on the smaller mid market? So these are some of the choices that I'm sure anybody building companies here are probably thinking. What's sort of the best route to market? Because a lot of VCs here came and talked about, Tim talked about go-to-market being a critical component of what they look for in entrepreneurs, right? So can you speak to your journey about how you kind of arrived at where you are?
Sure. So for the first 4 or 5 years, we were largely a generalist services company in the data and data science space. 2 or 3 years back, we have fully verticalized the go-to-market model. So our vertical leaders, we call them our chief business officers, CBOs, they are kind of mini CEOs for their business units, and they are empowered by capabilities and COEs, which are the horizontals, right? So retail, CPG, industrials, these are some of our core verticals, and they are empowered by horizontals, some of which are functional, like customer analytics or supply chain, and some are more technical, like MLOps. And of course, channels and partnerships are also a big part of, in order to amplify your coverage to the market. So we, close to 25 to 30% of our inbound comes through our channel partners.
Interesting. So from a product company perspective, I mean, the product you have now, Vikram, is that what you started with? What's sort of the journey that you've taken?
So it's actually, we experimented a lot. So that's one of the things I've learned in the last 5-7 years now. I mean, you can have a bet on go-to-market, but a lot of times you have to just experiment because things work or not work based on the market maturity and the product maturity and where you are. But at least in security as a product, product that you build for mid-market or enterprise are actually two different products. So that's typically not something you can change later in the game. Right? So if you have built something for mid-market, you have to go to mid-market. Or if you build something on enterprise, you have to go there. But even in the mid-market or enterprise, you can go direct sales, or you can go channel, or you can go bottom-up, like practitioner, like DevOps kind of motion, or you can go like inside sales. And what we learned, over time, actually, at least I've learned over time, is that whenever you're trying to make a product sale, there are really 3 questions, you're trying to answer with the customer. Like why something, why now, and why us, like why this product? And if you have to spend if you're spending a lot of cycles on why something, there are certain motions that are out for you. Like you can't really go inside sales. You have to then, because you're trying to kind of convince the customer there is a problem. So you have to either go direct sales or you have to go bottom up and like convince developers, for example, the product is needed. Like those are the kind of 2 motions that work. If why something is very clear for customers, they're already looking for something, then it's about like why now and why this product, and that becomes differentiation. Then I think a lot of times inside sales and channel can work. And then one thing about channel, which again learned, which actually a lot of people told us also, was that your first 20 customers, 50 customers are not going to be from channel. You have to have customers before you go to the channel. Because you have to give them examples in their territory, in their expertise to say what kind of customers to go to and how to sell. So in general, channel kind of follows later. I mean, it can't be in the beginning of your go-to-market.
Yeah, I guess to Tim's point, you
Yeah.
need to know enough about your customers before you actually
Yes.
ask somebody else to go sell it.
Yes, because they are going to ask you like, okay, who do you want me to sell this to? And if the answer is, I don't know, you tell me, then you already lost that, right? That's not going to work. So essentially, you need to have 20 customers, 50 customers, 60 customers. And by the way, this is also geographic. So if you don't have any customers in, let's say, Atlanta, then a channel in Atlanta is going to have a hard time selling. So a lot of it becomes very hard. So channel is obviously a force multiplier. It's an awesome way to kind of get to a bigger scale. But you can't start there. You got to start somewhere else and then go there eventually.
Great. So I'm going to come back to founders or control freaks point. So what's the most? I'm sure you guys have made some controversial decisions through the years. So what's the most controversial decisions that you guys have made? Or even one decision for that matter. Sure. Go ahead.
Well, I had to let somebody go a couple of years back, and that person was very pivotal to the team. But I felt that the cultural fit was lacking, and it's not that he was in any way. I mean, he was performing, okay, but I felt the cultural fit was lacking, and me and my other co-founders, we had to make a decision to, let that person move on, right? And it became a controversial decision. We had to do quite a bit of damage control around that, but I'm so glad that we made that decision because eventually it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean the point of that question was, you want to go run a company. I think the key to remember is it's never up, up, up. It's up and down, up and down, up and down, the roller coaster, right? So, which means you probably will have to let people go, make some unpopular decisions and stick with it. But the key is to make those decisions, not procrastinate. And the key is to experiment and fail fast, right? And so you can learn from it and pick it up and run. So that was the rationale behind the question. But let's hear from Vikram.
So actually, I'm gonna flip it a bit and argue that if you're not a control freak in certain areas, you'll actually fail. And kind of why that's the case, right? So at some level, when you're starting something, you have some vision, and the vision is shared with your co-founders and founding team. But it's actually very hard to stay on that vision because everybody comes in with different kind of perspective, different experience, and people want to kind of figure out exactly where to go. So unless you can actually keep people aligned on one thing, you're gonna fail because you're gonna get distracted and you're gonna get go in different rounds and it doesn't work. But at the same time, you have to take your team with you, right? It has to be alignment where they have a buy-in. And that's very hard too, because you have one vision and it has to be shared and it has to be buy-in. And that's where sometimes, when there is no alignment, you have to course correct. And if you don't course correct, then again you fail. So I think at some level, I don't see it as control freakness, but more around your alignment and the vision is the basis of your success. And you have to be very brutal about it many times. And if it's not right, or it can be wrong by the way, and you can pivot or you can go somewhere else. But if it's not there, you have a problem. So I think that's how we kind of executed. And I don't remember one thing, but it was probably every week there was some discussion on why this is not the right way to go. And we all have to come together and we all have to sit together. But it has to eventually be one. And we had to iteratively go through that all the time.
Sure. Yeah.
So I actually would disagree with you a little bit there, Jagdish, because maybe I was a little bit more of a control freak in the early years, but I'm not anymore. Because I feel that as the company matures, you need to bring the right kind of leaders who have the same founder's mindset, and founders need room to experiment, right? They need their own space to do things their own way. And if you try to tell them how to do their things, then at some point it's going to become an impediment for scale.
So it's a balance.
Yeah.
You can be a control freak from the point of view of sticking to a vision, but you don't want to get into a micromanagement. right? So yeah, so point well taken there. So I think let me open up some audience questions. Any questions for these guys? Entrepreneurs, anybody? Amit.
I've known at least one of you quite closely, and I think it was an incredible, proud moment to see Shubh here. My question for both of you, and I think, as I said, I've known Shubh quite well. Leesbrook, I know, done a fantastic job over there. What is the one decision you would change if you were to go back 5 years in time?
I can go first. Thank you, Amit. Great question. I think I would have verticalized our solutions even earlier. We were generalists for too long, and the kind of growth momentum that we have seen, especially since we verticalized our solutions, I would have liked to start that journey at least 2 years before I eventually did.
Yes, I think for me, it's basically like talking to like a lot of customers like early on. Like so for us, like we had a thesis and we kind of had a good idea about what we want to build, and we kind of went ahead and built it, and we kind of then a traditional cycle that startups go through. But I wish actually like that I could go back and then was doing like let's say like 2 to 3 to 5 customer calls like every day, regardless of whether I have something to sell or not, but just talk to them. Because what happened a lot was that, as you get so busy with building something, you kind of lose touch with the market. And then by the time you come out and for a breather, because you have something built, the market has changed. And now you have to pivot even faster, right? So in general, like keeping, pulse of the market from between raising money to actually, going and selling it in GA time, like it's generally like 18 months to 2 years. And that 2 years can kill you if you don't have like a pulse of the market. We didn't do that a lot, and I think if I ever do it again or anybody who's doing it, I would just recommend talking to customers, like even if you have nothing to sell, just getting them feedback like continuously, because that will help you evolve like much faster and arrive at the right place at the right time versus having to do it later.
Great. Any other questions? Yes, Ramesh.
Couple of quick questions. One, Shubh, when you said culture fit, you had to let someone go. Was it like a ethical culture fit where somebody cheated on their expenses kind of thing? Or was it more behavior? And would you care to elaborate on that? That's one question. The second question is, I'll just give you a theory and then you tell me whether you agree with it or not. Most good managers are found to be selective micromanagers. Meaning you can't be micromanaging everything, you don't have the time. God only gave you 24 hours. So you have to trust good people and learn from them. But now and then, you need to have the right to go touch the tile and come out. Right? For example, for us, B2B software, some issue will come across my desk. And for that issue, I want to go right into the detail because that could give me an indication of what is wrong in the organization. So would you call yourself a selective micromanager? Is that bad or good with you?
I can take the first question, Vikram, and maybe you can take the second. So it was not a cultural fit, Ramesh. It was more behavioral. So let me elaborate on that, right? So one thing I've learned, especially I would say over the last 3 years, when I'm hiring a talent, when I'm hiring a senior leader into the organization, I should look for somebody who can be the best at that job for the next 24 to 36 months. I don't need to look for leaders who will be great leaders 5 years later. So I have a tremendous amount of bias for people who know how to roll up their sleeves, who, to your actually second question as well, Ramesh, who like to go into the depth when he or she has to, and who doesn't hide behind 3 levels of hierarchy, who doesn't spend too much time in making beautiful presentations, because I feel making powerful PPTs beyond a certain point is not fruitful, right? In fact, I like leaders who Yeah, of course, sometimes you need to pat on your own backs and your team's backs, but you spend 10% of your time doing that and 90% of your time solving new problems, right? So this particular person was struggling to do that. I can't see Ramesh anymore. Okay.
Sitting in the back.
This particular person was struggling to do, kind of fit into this mold that I just mentioned. So, yeah.
Yes, I think, and going back to being a software engineer, to me, most of the problems have like an algo or a solution that you kind of have to fit into the problem, right? So when you're early on, when you're less than, let's say, 20 people, 30 people, your outcomes matter, right? Like how you achieve your outcomes is not really that critical, but the outcomes matter. So you then have to get aligned and you have to kind of become very regimented on the outcome. But as you scale up and you're like 500,000 people, then outcomes matter, but how you arrive at them is also very important. So then you have to change your algo to kind of say, look, I have a more of a breather room in terms of whether something happens this quarter or next quarter. But my process of how I arrive to that has to be the right process. So everything becomes about like the process and the scale and how kind of bottom up you derive your efficiency, right? But it's actually a function of the problem, right? So if you have an outcome thing where imagine a very important deal that you have to win, and if you don't win it, you lose. Well, then you will. It doesn't matter how many details you have to go in, but you have to make sure it happens. But if that's not the case, then you shouldn't. Right? You don't want to go into depth and then kind of impinge on other people's kind of creativity also. Right? So I think at some point it becomes a question of to me personally, what's the problem and where you are and what's the right way to kind of approach that problem. And it kind of varies over time. Right? It's not one answer for all problems.
So Amit and Ramesh spoke so eloquently on the people, the importance of people, right, and having the right people. It's so true even in a startup, right? It's not just about big companies as you grow large organizations. It's especially true when you're really small, because one wrong hire can really slow you down and derail the whole vision, right? So going back to your early journeys, so what were your yes or no qualifiers as you hire? How did you choose whom to hire, early employees? Who were a good fit? What were kind of your... Go ahead.
I'll take it. So a lot of thoughts there. I've kind of hired people in startups for the last 10, 11 years now. And again, I'm going to focus more on the early 20 hires.
Sure, yeah, qualities.
The good news is there's not a volume problem. You're not trying to hire 1,000 people. There's 10 people core in your team. And the way I look at it almost always is engineering is a very well-oiled engine, right? There are so many different parts to it, which all have different skills. And if you don't cover all the skills well, then you fail. So then everybody you hire is actually, you kind of in your brain, you're imagining them to, cover some parts of the engine. And then you hire a second person, then it's another some parts of the engine. And it's good if there's overlap. But at the end of the day, it's a resource-constrained environment. You can only hire 10 people, imagine. Then those 10 people have to cover the entire engine. So it's for me, it always has been a very sequential hiring, where until I've hired somebody, I don't actually know who I'm going to hire next. And anybody who comes in, the more area they can cover, the more generalists they are, it's actually more interesting. At the end of the day, all of that is at the skill side, but eventually you have to have clarity of thought and intellectual honesty to be able to admit when somebody says something which if you're wrong, you can be able to admit it. And the alignment with the team in terms of culture and to say, look, are you aligned on what we are building? If that's the problem, then it's not a hire, right? For me, clarity of thought, intellectual honesty, and the alignment are super important. Beyond that, it's all trying to figure out how you cover the area that you cover. And the more you do it, the more.
Sure.
Yeah, so early days, you don't have a lot of money, right? So obviously you can't go for a lot of experience.
Exactly.
So yeah, you're basically looking for, let's say, less experience, but folks who have that fire in their belly. They are like you. They have that founder mindset. I think Amit, you had something in one of your slides this morning. Will being more important than skill. You look for people who have that DNA and who have the right combination of IQ and EQ, right? You basically are looking for people who can co-create with you, who are not scared of doing atrocious things. Right? Yeah.
Any other questions, the audience? Yes. Mic this way.
So Ashok, my question is for you. So the company you founded is primarily a services company, right? So is the expertise of your people the only USP, or do you need some kind of a unique asset or accelerator to differentiate yourself in the market?
Thank you.
And I have a follow-up question to that. Sorry, two questions there. But
Closer to the mic.
yeah, the second question is, how do you drive non-linear growth from a business that's primarily services driven?
Yeah. So, and actually the two questions are related. So, expertise is important, but we look for that hunger in people, right, in addition to expertise. Especially in earlier years when, we didn't have the funding to do a lot of, experimental hiring. We had to be very, very careful and go for that hunger. And if we had to prioritize that hunger over expertise, we would do that. Right? So to answer your second question, non-linear growth, it's tricky, right? Because at the end of the day, in the services business, every new dollar of revenue is a consultant who needs to get built on a project, right? We are trying to challenge that now. We have built a platform called Atom.ai. We have all our verticalized offerings, whether it's retail, CPG, supply chain, or customer analytics, has now been harvested, and they're part of that stack. And leveraging that stack, we are now able to drive so we are able to drive a more price premium offering. We are able to accelerate our delivery, right? I would say we're still in early stages, but that's a new journey that has started for us in the last year or so. And if I'm able to continue to boost that vision with the right, talent and leaders, and make the right investments, then I think we will be able to achieve what we are looking to achieve over the next 4 or 5 years.
So I think we are coming up on time here. Let me wrap up by asking you guys. So for those, especially there are a lot of new graduates who are just joined the workforce. I'm sure many of them are thinking about starting new companies. So what are the 3 takeaways you would like to leave them with as we wrap up the session here?
If a lot of the things that people say about startups, I honestly think now are true. Some of your best days and your worst days are there, it's ups and downs, and sometimes the same day. In the morning something happens, by evening something else happens, and you're completely different person at that time. So it's an up and down, it's a lot of work, but if I go back, I would do it in a heartbeat again. Because at some point, I got into engineering because I like to make things, right? It's at some point taking an abstract idea and converting that into something real, and it's just doing startups is just another journey to that, right? So anybody who's thinking about it, I'll highly recommend take a dive, but kind of remember, it is important, it is kind of hard, but at the same time it's highly rewarding. And if you kind of come at it as I'm doing it because it's interesting for me as a person, not because I'm going to make a lot of money, then you will come out it with a lot of experience and a lot of rewarding kind of things to go with it, and it's worth it. It's totally worth it.
So I will answer the question a little differently, Jagdish. Why did I do this? Why I think every founder should do this? It's 3 things: fun, meaning, and money. Money obviously is important. You want to create a financial foundation for yourself. You don't want to be looking at your paychecks every month. Meaning also is very important because, of course, you want to be building something that you're proud of, right? You want the team to align with that vision, and if you are not able to articulate that with some level of clarity, the best people will not join you. But probably the most important for me is fun, right? At the end of the day, it's a lot of grind, right? Especially the first 3-4 years. It's just an extreme amount of hard work, right? A lot of sacrifices. And if you're not having fun while you're doing that, you will not be able to pull it off. So yeah, those are three things that I consider to be foundation in my journey as a founder.
Yeah, I think well said. I think I'd like to leave with a couple of my own. Again, remember, this is for anybody trying to think about this. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I think the VC said it. If you are trying to do something to make a quick buck, it's just a bad idea. Do not do it. Second is, I echo Shub. If you're not having fun doing it, don't do it. It's something that you have to truly enjoy. Coming to work every day, whether you get paid or not, probably there'll be early days where you're not going to be able to get paid. You won't have the money to pay yourself, but you have to enjoy what you're truly doing, right, every day. So I think those are the two things that are important. And the third thing is, I'm going to echo what Puneet said. It's so true even in a startup. Be bold and experiment. If you are not bold and don't experiment, you don't know. You don't know that what you set out to do was wrong, so you have to pivot. You don't know whether what you set out to do would be successful, whether it's a good product market fit. So experiment, be bold, luck favors the brave. So that's kind of what I want to wrap up with. Thank you so much for...
Can I say something to this really? No, I really want to thank the BHU community for helping me in my journey as a founder. Amit has been a great mentor over the years. He was actually one of my speakers in our customer event in 2019, the last one we could do pre-COVID. Two of my first three customers came through BHU Connections. In fact, I don't know if Asit is in this audience somewhere here. Asit has been my client not once, not twice, but thrice. So I really want to thank him for doing that. Yeah, it's just my co-founder Sumit Mehra is also from '96. So he and I obviously still work very closely together. I spend more time with him than I spend with my wife. Yeah, so I've really gotten a lot from this community. So thank you so much.
I think that's a fitting wrap up. It's a phenomenal community you guys have here. So really network. You got a great set of mentors as well as friends, and who knows, they could be your future co-founders, business partners, employees. So leverage that was the whole purpose of this event. It's first and foremost a networking event. So we've tried to foster that connection, to take advantage of it and go conquer the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.